What if I told you that the trauma that you have experienced, or the specific negative life events that you have gone through, are not at the source of your wounds? They are not at the source of why you are currently searching for healing, for all types of modalities to get your life back into balance. What if I told you that there was a clear path to step into a life where you do not constantly have to have something new to heal? We have all heard this. We hear it from many of the spiritual communities, the psychotherapy communities. We hear it from the healers that you need to dig up all the wounds and the traumas and all of the things that happened to you, heal them, but accept that life is always going to give you something new to heal. But I'm here to tell you today that there is another way. So I want you to join me today in exploring a new perspective, a divine perspective from the eyes of the One that I know will transform your life. I'm Dr. Holda Gueye, and this is the Becoming Yourself podcast. What if all of your problems stem from the fact that you do not really know who you are? What if the world you live in is nothing more than a mirror of everything that you have decided you are right now? And what if the secret to your miracles, to receiving and becoming the dreams that are bigger than you, lie in becoming yourself? I'm Dr. Holda Gueye, and welcome to the Becoming Yourself podcast, the I Am journey to healing your body and your life. Welcome home. There's this common teaching that is going around that goes something like this. You were traumatized when you were a child, and that trauma caused you to try to protect yourself. And in trying to protect yourself, you created basically a set of beliefs and identity, an entire life story that is currently at the root of your suffering, right? There's one that I recently heard on one of my favorite podcasts, Next Soul Level podcast, where Kyle Cease begins with giving the example that when you were a child, let's say this child got beaten for having a bad grade. And so they turn around and in order to never feel that uncomfortable feeling again, they create a entire persona around being an overachiever. And what I want to share is that this sequence or this perspective is true. It is not false. This is what happens. But when you put it that way, it makes it sound like the trauma was the inciting event. And the word trauma represents a lot of things. It could be the child that was beaten. It could be a world war, the world, and it disrupted your day-to-day life in your neighborhood and the life as you know it. It could be COVID, right? There are traumas that sometimes are not inflicted by individuals, but by our experiences. And so when you make it sound like it's the trauma that then caused us to create these barriers, these shields that have now handicapped us, then you're left thinking that you may have to live in a world where nothing happens to you, right? Or you get conclusions that I hear often Like there's always going to be something to heal because there's always going to be something else that'll happen. And there's a faulty there's a faulty perspective on this. And again, I'm not meaning that it is not true, because every perspective is true. It just depends on where you are standing and looking at what's happening. And that's explaining it from one perspective. What's really happening is that we are interpreting traumas either, on our own or through the influence of a caregiver or society in a way that is maladaptive. So let's go back and take Kyle Cease's example. For the child that was beaten, or let's say punished, let's keep it broad, punished for having a bad grade. What we do is we tell children, if you behave like this, then you're good. If you behave like this, then you're bad. And our soul knows that we are not bad. It is such a major cognitive dissonance, such a major violation of what we know to be true in our gut, that we react violently to that message as a child. And what should happen instead is, instead of telling the child, you will be punished if you have a bad grade and you will be rewarded if you have a good grade, is, let's say, when they do have that bad grade, or when they don't make their bed, or they don't follow the rules, or to have a conversation that sounds more like this. You are a divine, infinitely good soul that came here for a very specific experience and purpose. And when you chose not to study or prepare and have this bad grade, you are choosing a very specific experience for your life. And is that what you want? Because if you choose this, here's what you are creating with your infinite power and goodness. And it will be granted to you. Rather, if you choose putting in the effort and studying and getting a better grade, here's potentially what you are choosing and creating for yourself. And the same applies with any, swap out bad grades for anything. We have to stop sending the message to our children that they are bad for not doing what it is that we want them to do, and then good for doing what they want to do. The underlying message should always be, you are infinitely good. No matter what you do, you are infinitely good. But you are creating. You are also a creator, a powerful creator. And here's what you're creating if you choose this. Is this what you would like to choose? This is a very different way of approaching the same event, right? The same desire to have your child excel academically, except you're approaching it very differently. So it's not the trauma that has created us into these broken, on the surface, malfunctioning human beings. It's the way in which the things that happen to us have been interpreted for us. You take the same thing with COVID or wars. Of course, the messaging that we hear all around us is always deeply negative. All the ways in which our lives are no longer working, the ways in which the separation is crippling us and has crippled entire generations, et cetera, rather than looking at the golden opportunity to slow down and to stop as a species and to go within. What we have done as humans is to look at the things that happen to us and give them a negative interpretation, a negative meaning that always seems to demean our spirit and goes against what we know to be. And this is what has created broken, fragmented human beings in need of constant healing. So until you change that relationship with life itself, then you'll always have something to heal. So now let's take this a step further, because the common questions that I always get after explaining this is, well, what about people that went through traumatic events like rape or child molestation, or they were held at gunpoint, or the variety of very violent, traumatic things that can happen to you. And what you have to realize is that these violent events, and violence encompasses sexual violence and encompasses physical violence. Sometimes it includes violence from just narcissistic personalities or people that are in some sort of authority position over you and are marginalizing you or harassing you or basically treating you in a way that could be perceived as violent, even though they never touch you. All of these violent, traumatic events hold intrinsically within themselves the message that you are less than, because the perpetrator has to make you feel like you are so little, so insignificant, and therefore manipulatable, that they have almost the right to treat you the way that they treated you, to do to you what they did to you. So in the violent act itself is the message that you are less than, that you are not good, that you are not worthy, that you are small. And that is how that gets internalized, just like in the prior examples that I gave in different situations where we are the ones who assign negative meaning. When we are the victims of violent acts, the negative meaning on our person comes with the act, because that's just the way that it's set up, so that they can target you and treat you, victimize you. And in those moments, what we often lack is the support to allow us to see that we did not fall victim to that violent act because we were not worthy, that it had nothing to do with us and our worthiness, but had everything to do with the perpetrator's wounds and the perpetrator's pain and the perpetrator's unresolved issues. We're often surrounded by people that are equally confused, maybe scared, maybe hiding things or trying to protect the other party. And it isn't until later that we get to unpack that we had internalized that unworthiness. And it's that creates the maladaptive beliefs, the maladaptive identifications that create maladaptive humans. And so if we can recognize in our support for people that are victims of violent acts, that we have to give them the unconditional, unquestionable message that they are worthy, and that this didn't happen to them because they're not worthy. This didn't happen to them because they are small, because they deserved it. And if we can undo that in the support we offer, then you undo the effects of the trauma. Then you don't carry the trauma with you for years and years and decades But unfortunately, the traumatized doesn't want to feel or talk about it, and often finds very, very creative ways to bury it. And just never receives that support. So what can you do today, knowing this perspective, that there is a way to live your life where you are not on this perpetual journey of healing? That there is a way to live a life where things happen, but you do not have to feel broken from them? You must first acknowledge that you are an infinite, perfect, grand, worthy, good being. And this is your nature. This is your spirit. And when life is lifing, when life is happening, and you experience that as stress, this is your signal that you are giving a negative meaning to the things that are happening to your life. So I'm going to ask you to change your relationship with life itself. When you are feeling like you're drowning with work and work feels stressful, ask yourself, what is the story you're telling yourself? Right? It's always things like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this. What if I don't do a good job? This is so much. I'm not able to do the things that I love. I feel worried and anxious that I'm not going to meet these deadlines. I don't enjoy working with so-and-so on this project. They make me feel like I don't know anything. I have to second guess myself, right? I don't even have to keep going because we are all familiar with these thoughts. But what if the true story is actually, I'm given these projects because they trust in my skills. They know that I am capable of delivering on this. I'm good at what I do. I am so good and so confident that I am able to deliver on this, that I'm going to spend some time to invest in myself too. I'm going to carve out some time where I can do some self-care because there's nothing to fear here. The more I invest in my, moments of self-care every day, the more I'm going to be able to give 100% of myself on these projects that I have been assigned at work. I'm blessed to have this job. I'm blessed that I have this position. I am grateful that I get to be challenged and to learn all these new things. And I know I'm being challenged because I have to put on my thinking hat and I have to be creative to try to see how I can deliver this project in the best way possible. And I'm going to look at this as a challenge, right? Do you see how different that feels already? It almost feels like an exhale, from holding your breath to an exhale. And we should be doing this with everything. I have mentioned over and over during the pandemic to people that come to me and complain of how hard it is, and it was hard. But it was hard because our relationship with life is toxic. And I remember having conversations with patients, telling them how beautiful the pandemic can be for them and seeing their eyes light up. Telling them, showing them the areas of light, the areas of opportunity. In fact, some patients took that conversation to heart, and I know some who went from financial struggles to actually making the most money they've ever made in their lives during the pandemic by opening themselves up to the opportunities that every event poses. And so what I'm asking you today to consider in light of everything that you have just heard is that if you choose today, once and for all, to always remember your goodness, to always remember your divinity, to always remember your greatness and your power, that you are in every moment simply choosing what you're going to create and you couple this with a radical transformation with your relationship to life itself, you turn on your ability to see the gifts, to see the light in everything that is happening in your life. If you can do those two things, then stress disappears. Then you don't have to be on this hamster wheel of constant healing. Once you have healed everything you have acquired up until now, you can choose a life moving forward that I promise you is going to feel so different from everything that you have known. I hope that this episode opened your eyes today and opened your heart. I hope that it has opened you to yourself, and that you will take it and change your life. So until next time, I want you to remember always to move, to speak, to think, to feel as if you were the one, because you are. Take care.